So I'm looking for the man that she just introduced. If anybody sees him out there, please tell him to come up here and take my spot then. Good afternoon. It's indeed a pleasure to be here. This is indeed an important forum. It's important that you took time out of your busy schedules to come here. It's important that the speakers that you've seen here throughout the day come here and talk. It's important for us to share where we're heading toward. And what Goldie talked about there is reducing the IT within the government is probably the prevailing thing. I mean, we just had a panel up here talking about FITARA and the things there that are going through there. And I'm going to see if this thing works. Yeah, it does work. I'm going to keep my talk short. I have one slide behind this thing. But reducing the cost of IT in government. General Farrell kind of said that I'd be talking about this thing called Joint Information Environment. I'm not. Because it's been talked about a lot. We're implementing it. It's an environment. It's a framework. It goes hand in hand with some of the same thing that the intelligence community is working on in terms of the eyesight. It's how do I improve the operational capability to our mission set, whether it be the troops that General Farrell talked about, to the operations that take place back here, to the exchange of information that takes place with our mission partners. Our mission partners being other federal agencies, our mission partners being state, local, and tribal activities, our mission partners being all those foreign countries that we exchange information with, we exchange non-government and government operations with. It is about moving information to the right place at the right time and make sure that the right people with the right access have access to it. This past year, both the Secretary and the Deputy Secretary invoked on continue on the same thing that we've been working on since 2010, and that is how do I drive down the budget of DoD? One of the things that they targeted was the IT side of the house. How do we do that? First off, like you've heard in the past few presentations is, what's my baseline? What is my cost of what I do today? I would tell you that the DoD CIO, we put forth an annual IT budget. We know what it is. It's based upon the things you see up here. This is not a new slide, but I give it to you as an exemplar of what we're facing inside DoD. As General Farrell talked about, we have the 4 major departments. I also have numerous agencies that have specified missions that all require the use of IT to exchange information out there. You have to know the complexity of what we're talking about here. And then how do I drive it down through governance? And it's sometimes just through sheer taking away the money. Last year, we stood up a joint effort between the Defense Change Management Office, the deputy there, and the DoD CIO. And we called it the Business Process System Review. And the idea there was to go and look at the 4th estate, those direct report organizations that report directly to the Secretary of Defense, and the agencies that fall beneath them. And we've been going through them systematically, looking at how many people they have, what kind of contracts they have, what kind of IT they have, what does it cost, how is it put together. We're now completing the first year of that. And what's important is it's going back up to the undersecretaries, those owners of that entity, to come back to the Deputy Secretary and the Secretary and say, I've looked at my mission sets, I've looked at how I'm organized, I've looked at what my cost of doing business is, and here's where I can gain some effectiveness, and here's where I can gain some efficiencies by doing that. And it is amazing the opportunities that we have lying in front of us here. So you're going to see some of these numbers here go down over the next few years here as they projected now into the budget coming up here on what we're going to do with the total budget of the Department of Defense, but also the IT piece of it there. But the real challenge is not about the technology. It is somewhat in how I put together the acquisition or the procurement of services and or of hardware, but it's really about the change of the culture. I grew up in the Army. I spent 30 years there. I put things together because mission dictated it, and I could convince the necessary leadership to give me the dollars to do it, and we'll make things happen. IT was such a commodity at that time, we could do that. We can no longer do it. I now need to know with surety that I can exchange information, I can connect those units that General Farrell talked about, I can share that information, but I have to know how to secure it, and I have to know that it's secured, and I have to know what, at the end of the day, how much this thing is costing me. Because it is not about what can I get from Congress today, it is how do I sustain this thing in terms of my workforce and in terms of my dollars to sustain it there. This past year, we have now implemented a standard cyber scorecard. A lot of it kind of influenced what came out of the OMB in July, and a lot of it is stuff that we've been doing. What's different now in changing culture? Leadership is behind it. Not only inside DoD, but at the federal level now, leaders are taking account of that and answering for it. Secretary of Defense gets this thing once a month, and he is driving Mr. Halverson and I hard on saying, what does this number mean, and how do I improve it there? That's a good thing. That's the neat thing about 2016 that we're all looking forward to. Because when you have leadership asking those hard questions, you can then begin to align things, and you can drive home the necessary change there. As General Farrell talked about, it's also about building partnerships. That's the second thing that's important. Because none of us can do this alone. I cannot close down data centers. I can't even put a target out there without the partnerships with those who own the data centers and then driving the necessary budgetary stuff as well as the acquisition piece. It's about building partnerships across the federal space. As the group before me talked about, how do I build those special enterprise license agreements? How do I go across and build partnerships with industry on how I put together products so I don't have to figure out what vendors out there I need to bring to the fray? How can I partner with you guys so that you can form those strategic partnerships, come to us with those solutions and say, let's bid on this thing and let's put this thing together here. Finally, it's about showing tenacity. So we heard from the group about FITARA and how that changed some of the stuff there in the relationships of the CIO with the CXOs. I cannot say how important that whole relationship is. My whole life right now as the deputy DoD CIO is I spend a lot of time every week on various acquisition panels in support of what Mr. Kendall holds as the major decision maker there on which programs go forward and which ones get changed. That's important. It takes a lot of time from us to do that, but it's important that we're involved with that there. At the same time, I'm on several of the acquisition panels here that meet at the OMB level there. Again, important, how do you set the stage for the whole group there? I'll go one step further here. One of the things that General Farrell talked about here was the JRSS, the Joint Regional Security Stack. A very complex system. It's made up of various sets of components in there that come from various vendors, and we're going to be changing some of those things out. Why? Because acquisition and mergers happen. Technology changes. What we were doing today may be good enough now, but then the next breakthrough comes through. I need to be able to drop and insert technology. I need to change out as acquisition and mergers happen, as contracts change. How do I keep changing that thing? And I'm reducing the complexity out there, as General Farrell talked about. If I go through all my devices on the right-hand side, my endpoints are increasing, but I got to drive down my network side of the house. And I want to go more to what Frank Bateman talked about. Can I know what with all prediction here of what my requirements are, and that I have an annual cost associated with a service? And with that service, I know what my connectivity is. With my service, I know where I can expand some things, and I can decrease some things as I shut down things as we change the whole force structure. That's the exciting thing of where we're going to in 2016 and beyond there. And you're going to see some of those things coming up in the budget talks there. We talked briefly, General Farrell mentioned the digital innovation opportunity that we're standing up there inside Silicon Valley. It's nothing new. We've been trying to do that for quite some time. And I don't think that one unit itself is going to be the magical thing, but it is setting the stage now here where we can have those discussions there and then bring back those innovations and those ideas back here. We've had some of that forming here inside Washington, D.C. for the past year plus with 18F and with the digital services folks. We're making progress there. Now I need to bring it back into, and I need to bring it across this whole big scope here called DoD. We're not a homogeneous company here. We change every day, and there's a lot of parts that are changing as I stand here today. Finally, we're going to see a lot of changes coming up here in the next year, talking about contracts. How do I get that service level agreement out there for providing me a service, whether it be infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, software as a service? How do I establish those enterprise license agreements so that I can use it across my Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, my stay-at-home force, as I call it, the Fourth Estate? How do I buy that at a broker scale here and then know that it can be sustained and I can upgrade it within a few years? Our biggest challenge here is, as we talked about earlier, is my cost accounting codes. How do I structure my budget so I know what I'm paying for, what is it going toward, and can I change that? We're working hard throughout the department right now today is coming up with some lines in our budget that I can identify as being IT costs. Because right now today, just as General Farrell talked about in other ones, a lot of our IT is embedded inside programs, it's buried inside their budget lines, and I can't pull it up here. So we're working at how do I get that transparency across the board so I can see it inside programs, but I can then pull it back up to the top too there. What I'm talking about here is things that are happening inside DoD. You've heard me mention some things that deal with the federal space. This is where we share it together. And I just came from a speaking engagement yesterday, dealing with a lot more of the commercial side of the house there. And I'll leave on this note. Cybersecurity is our #1 threat now here. It affects everything that we do. As we've said before, with the size and complexity of DoD here, every function out there inside the government and inside the private sector is represented in some shape or form inside DoD. A decade ago, the only one who cared about cybersecurity was DoD. And we wrote it into contracts, and everybody said, "Phew, thank God we're not DoD." Because that costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of effort to make it happen, and I want to go off and spend my bucks doing this, or I want to make my money by selling it to the private firms and that kind of stuff. A few years after that, the federal government said, you know, this cyber stuff is kind of important. We've got to take it more seriously. So the federal government got involved with it. And again, everybody said, thank God I'm not the federal guys. I can't afford that. I don't need to be doing that. With the events of the past 2 years, we're all in the same boat now together. State, local, tribe, federal. I don't care if you sell to DoD at the very top with a mega contract, or you're selling to a local entity inside a state or a city, cybersecurity must be included with it. Together, this is where we must help drive down the cost of that while improving the security side of the house of that. That's the partnership, again, I'm talking about. None of us can do it by ourselves. If we're the various federal agencies there, there's nothing I can put together that can help drive down the costs just by ourselves. I need the vendor community, and I need the agencies, I need the state and tribes to figure out what the appropriate cost is for the appropriate security. We're going into the world of Internet of Things. Not everything has to be protected to the same degree. I didn't say they should not be protected, they just don't need to be protected to the same degree. If I have a wireless device, if I have a Bluetooth device, depending upon the risk of where that thing is being operated in, I may need to have different protocols or different methodologies to secure it. I need to be concerned about that security, but I don't need to have the same rigor of security in it as I would for a more threat-based environment involving the Bluetooth. It's such, and such then, I will also make that operational call. This is too risky. Will not employ that kind of technology there. I'll use this instead here. So there's no one blanket thing there across the board. There's no one blanket decision on wireless is good, wireless is bad, Bluetooth is good, Bluetooth is bad. We're going to continually change that, and the risk mitigation piece is what's going to come into factor now here of how do I risk or examine the risk to my operation, employ the right technology, and employ the right security for it. And so I implore you, as we go forward now, let's think about the top-level security piece. How do I embed it into everything that I buy, everything that I do? But let's keep the operational risk side of the house on one hand and the cost here well in proportion there. Because if we can't keep it secure, we're affected by it. But if I can't afford to buy it, it's just as bad. With that, I thank you very much for your time, and I look forward to seeing you around here through this coming year here, and it's a great day to keep doing the IT stuff, because this is what keeps us all young at heart. Thank you all very much.